All right. Hello. Today we're going to be talking about social awareness, effectively working with others. My name is Latrell Adams, and I have the awesome privilege of serving as one of our 4 SEL specialists in our district. And I have with me here my good friend, Cynthia Brown, who also serves as another SEL specialist. And we're just so super excited, right, Cynthia, to
Yes.
be here with you all today to continue our series on social awareness for our parents. And so I'll pause and let Cynthia say her hellos to you.
Hello, and I'll just echo Latrell's sentiments. We're so glad that you have been hanging with us throughout this series. We hope that something that we have said so far has been helping you as a parent. We love talking about social and emotional learning, but we particularly love talking about it with other parents as we are both parents. I have 3 daughters in elementary and middle school, and Latrell has 2 daughters in elementary and an adult. And so we talk to each other quite often about parenting, and we're really excited to talk with you about it as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cynthia. And so we're going to go ahead and move forward with our presentation. Like she said, we love talking to parents about social emotional learning. And so this is a slide that we know that you've seen for several weeks now. You may even be able to recite it. And so it's really important for us just to start our presentations off with our vision, because vision gives us sight to see, right? And it allows us to be in a space where we know what our goals are ahead and what it is that we strive to do. And so our SEL vision statement for the district is: through social emotional learning, Guilford County Schools nurture safe, supportive, and equitable learning spaces where adults feel confident, empowered, and responsible for helping students develop into productive and responsible citizens who thrive in college, career, and life. And so you see our SEL vision is about adults, right? So when we're talking about adults, we're talking about the educators that are working with your babies. We're talking about you, and we're talking about me, right? And so it's about us being in a space where we feel confident, right? We feel empowered, and we feel responsible for helping our babies develop into productive and responsible citizens who not just survive, but thrive in college, career, and life. And so hopefully throughout our time together, you've been able to also see the alignment with our district's vision, mission, and values with our SEL vision. So we'll go ahead and move forward. This is our SEL competencies wheel, and we like to always keep this wheel in because it gives you an actual picture of what it is that we're talking about when we're talking about social emotional learning, when we're talking about systemic SEL. And so I won't cover the inside of the wheel just yet, because we'll cover it in the next few slides. But what's really important is that what we're saying here is that when a student experiences SEL in across multiple contexts in their day, right? That's where they're really able to develop their SEL skills, right? So when students see SEL represented in their home, in their communities, in their schools, in their classrooms, then they're really able to develop those social emotional learning skills, and that's what it is that we desire. And that's one of our goals, is to be able to share with you about social emotional learning and strategies that you can implement in your home to help increase your students' social emotional learning at home. And so we'll go ahead and move forward. So, we always start with an SEL opener. And so today is no different. And so last week we talked about self-care and the importance of self. And so want you to think back to your self-care plan that you created. If you have not created a plan yet, we need you to go back and do that, right? Because it's really important, and we have to be intentional about that, right? So I want you to share one thing that you have done in the past week or hope to do in the coming week as a form of self-care. And so I'll just give you just one moment to think about that and write that down. So you can just jot it down. What's one thing that you have done in the past week or hope to do in the coming week as a form of self-care? And just to give you a little bit more think time and to be able to journal some thoughts down, I'll ask Cynthia if she wants to share.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. I was trying to think which area this comment is going to fit, but being able to take some time off. And so taking some time off could probably be systemic because I was able to get some rest, but also relational because I took some time off to spend with family and just to kind of reconnect. So, and if we thought about when we were talking about last week, mind, body, and spirit, I think that probably helped my body with the rest and my spirit having some time off.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. And
Yeah.
being able to connect with those who we love and bring us joy is definitely a huge part, I think, of self-care, right? I think for me, one of the things that I've been able to do or been trying to practice doing is systemic, right? And then we know that self-care is more than systemic, right? That's just one of the I would say that that's probably an area that sometimes I struggle, right? Just being able to rest, being able to take a moment to pause. And so I've intentionally tried to build that in my day, is taking that moment to pause. And I also have been trying to be intentional about cognitive, right? I never thought about self-care this way,
Right.
but just thinking about it in how it is that I think and being able to um, reframe and assume positive intent, is something that I've been trying to be intentional about, and it's really helping me. So we hope that you've had a moment to jot down how it is that you're taking care of yourself, or how it is that you plan to continue your self-care journey this week. If you have not done that yet, again, we want to encourage you, empower you, motivate you to do that, because it's so very important. So what is it that we've learned so far? Y'all have spent a lot of time with us, right? And what is it that we've learned? We talked about self-awareness, and when we talked about self-awareness, this is what we said, that hey, when you know yourself well, you understand your core values and how those core values show up for you, right? So we did the core values activity where we asked you to choose 3 of your core values, and to think about how they show up for you at work, how they show up for you in your home. Many of you said that you wanted to go back and do that core value activity with your family. And so you understand your core values and how they impact your life. And it's not just a space where you are professing your values, but you're actually practicing those values day in and day out. You understand your personality, and even though it may be completely different than your kids and other members of your household, but you understand your personality and what it is that your personality needs. But you also are, and as a parent, you're also trying to help your child understand these things as well, right? So you're trying to help your child understand their core values, understand how their personality shows up in the world, and understand your emotions, and helping your child understand and name their emotions, right? And so these are core components of self-awareness, right? So self-awareness for you, and helping your child understand develop their self-awareness is really important. So then we talked about self-management. And when we talked about self-management is our ability to self-motivate, self-regulate. In self-awareness, we're identifying, what our emotions are. In self-management, we are managing those emotions, right? So we are controlling our impulses. It's about, self-management is about how it is that we manage stress, right? I know that over the last few months, we probably all have been super stressed, more than, more than we may have normally have been. And so it's also about like how we set and achieve our goals, and our organizational skills. And some components of self-management are mindfulness versus habit. So we talked about how our brain operates out of habit, right? And so we have to create new pathways in our brain. And a strategy for that is to be able to pause and be more mindful, and being in that moment. We talked about our amygdala being hijacked, and what's taking place there, right? And how deep breathing and meditation is another strategy to help us be more mindful, help us to manage ourselves more appropriately. Again, we talked about the importance of self-care and having a self-care plan. and how we can cultivate joy and have more humor in our lives. And so today we're going to talk about social awareness. And when we're talking about what it is that we hope that you get out of the session, we hope that you're able to recognize the value of learning to work well with others, as well as strategies to build community. And when we're talking about community, you can think about it as your home being a community. You can think about the community at large, and how compassion is used as a strategy to maintain relationships and community, right? So being able to how to help our kids be more empathetic and compassionate. And also, our hope is that you will receive knowledge and skills to make responsible decisions within a community. So when we're talking about what it is that we mean when we're referring to social awareness is the ability to take the perspective of and empathize with others, including those from diverse backgrounds and cultures. The ability to understand social and ethical norms for behavior, and to recognize family, school, and community resources and support. So when we're talking about social awareness, we're talking about our abilities to take on the perspectives of others, our ability to show empathy, practice empathy, be able to appreciate diversity and have respect for other people. And so then responsible decision making, this is the competency that comes up every single time we've had a session with you all. And responsible decision making, you'll remember, is our ability to make constructive choices about our personal behavior, right? So we're in a space where we're identifying problems, analyzing problems, reflecting on the problems and the solutions. And then we're thinking to ourselves and asking ourselves, like, what is my ethical responsibility to myself? What is my ethical responsibility to my kids and other people that are around me, right? And so that's what it is that we're referring to when we're talking about responsible decision making. And so today we're going to talk about these components. And so when we think about why it is that social awareness matters, right? And so you may be asking yourself, why is it that social awareness matters? People with strong social awareness adapt more easily to their communities and their environments. They're able to empathize with others. They're able to relate to others. They're able to connect with others that are different than them, all right? And so we want to make sure that we are encouraging that in our kids, that, yes, it's cool to have people around you that are like you, but it's also really cool to engage in conversation and connect with people that are completely different from you, right? So it gives them a different experience. And so when we're thinking about social awareness, it helps us have better relationships, in our lives. It helps us have a positive home climate, which I'm sure we all want positive home climates, right? And so there's also even recognizing the diversity that lives within our household, like the diversity in personalities, the diversity in thought, right? And thinking about that. And so is also social awareness matters because humans need community, right? And so when we're thinking about community, again, we're thinking about like your home being a community. And so it's really important for us to think about that in a sense of how we need each other, right? We need each other. I know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you probably have heard of that before. And when we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one of the first things that Maslow says that we need is safety, right? Is safety, being able to be in a space where we are safe, right? But there's another social scientist that says, hey, like, yes, this is awesome. And yes, safety is important, but we also have to have connection. We also have to have someone else that's invested in us being successful. And so one of the first thing that we need is a relationship. We need community, right? So humans need community. And so also another key component of social awareness is that, students that have a high or function high in the social awareness competency, they have greater career success, which we definitely want our kids to be successful in their careers, and they have fewer risky behaviors. And what we mean by fewer risky behaviors is that when your social awareness is at a high level. You know within your community what it is that you need. You're able to ask for what is it that you need. And so that in turn allows for there to be fewer risky behaviors, because you're able to acknowledge, hey, I need something, and within your community be able to ask for what it is that you need, right? So when we think about like what it is that we bring to our prospective communities, when we think about what is that we bring to our prospective communities, we bring our ability to trust, we bring our ability to show empathy, our ability to show compassion, our ability to take on the perspectives of others, and our ability to forgive and be forgiven. And so we're going to spend some time today talking about all of these things, because this is how it is that we develop community, because we all have our own different experiences with all of these things. We have our experiences that we bring as it relates to trust. We have our experiences that we bring as it relates to empathy and compassion. We have our experiences that we bring as it relates to perspective taking, as well as forgiveness. And so these are all huge when we're talking about social awareness and building community. So we're going to kick it off with talking about trust. And this 4-letter word is huge, huge, huge. And so I want you to think about like what does trust mean to you? What has it felt like in your personal and professional life? What does it feel like in your home, right? I want you to think about that, right? And I want you to call to mind someone that you really, really trust. And this again can be personally or professionally. And I want you to think about 2 things. I want you to think about why it is that you trust that person. What has led you to trust that person? And I want you to also think about what do you think has led people to trust you? So on the flip side, I want you to think about what makes you trust the person that it is that's coming to mind right now, and what makes you a person that people trust. And so Cynthia and I will chime in and talk about this with you, but I'll give you just a few seconds to think about that before we jump in. So Cynthia, like, is anything coming up for you as it relates to trust?
Yeah, when I was thinking about answering the questions that you posed, what leads me to trust others? One, if I pick one thing, it would be that you do what you say you're going to do. And I think that goes back to when we did our core values. One of my core values came out was commitment. So then that's the same thing I think that leads people to trust me, is that they know that I'm going to do my best to do what I say I'm going to do. And so I can see that both ways. That's why I trust, and that's why people trust me. I hope.
Yeah, that's really good. I think for me, what's coming up is that if being able to trust my thoughts and feelings with someone else, right? So I think that people that I trust, when I share my thoughts and feelings, I'm confident in how they will handle my thoughts and feelings, and not that they will tell me what it is that I want to hear, but I trust that they are going to value it. Like, they're going to value like my space and where it is that I am. And the moment that I feel like you don't value my space, it makes me lose trust. And the moment that I feel like that you don't value like what it is that I'm feeling, I feel like that's when I lose trust, and that trust isn't present. And so the opposite of that is when I do share, like, hey, like, this is something that's coming up for me, and this is frustrating for me, and you're there and you show up, and, you know, I know that you are allowing me to be vulnerable, and you care about my vulnerability in
Right.
that moment, and that's really allowing me to trust you. I think when I think about like why people probably trust me, is that I feel like that I'm super reliable, right? And so even right before this call, I had a good friend of mine call me, and she's frustrated and frustrated, and I'm like there listening, like,
Yeah.
yes, like here, like I even had to tell Cynthia, hey, I'm coming,
Right.
because, you know, I'm trying to be there for my friend, right?
Yeah.
And so I think when someone knows like what it is they're going to get, they know that, hey, I don't have to talk to you every single day, but I know that you're going to show up and be there when I need you. So I think that that's really huge as it
Mm-hmm.
relates to my characteristic when I think about trust and what that means to other people about me. One of the things that we love, thank you for thinking about that, and thank you, Cynthia, for sharing your thoughts on that as well. One of the principles or the things that we have adopted when we're talking about trust is Brene Brown. You've probably heard Cynthia and I talk about Brene Brown before during the series, but one of the things that we talk about when we're talking about trust is Brene Brown's 7 elements of trust, right? And so she has these 7 elements, and they're called the braving principles, right? And what I always get from this is that in order to trust, you got to be brave. You got to be brave. And it's like, you know, I don't know too many people are just like, oh, I just trust everybody. Like, no, like you have to, it's a risk that you're taking. It's a vulnerability act that's taking place when you're trusting people, right? And so Brene breaks this down into 7 principles: boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. And as I go through these, I would like for you to think about which area you are rocking out and which area you're like, ooh, I need to grow on this one a little bit, right? So when Brene talks about braving, the first characteristics of the characteristic, or B, stands for boundaries, right? So with boundaries, you respect my boundaries, and when you're not clear about what's okay, you ask. You're willing to say no. And so trusting relationships have boundaries, right? I can say no. You can say no. And so it allows us to be in a space where we know each other's boundaries. Reliability. I feel like this is, of course, this is one that's really huge for me, and it's important for me to make sure that I have this as a part of my characteristics, but being able to do what it is that you say you're going to do. And the other part of that is not overcommitting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like in here, being willing to say no is also really important, right? Because when I know I can't be reliable, when I know that I'm not going to be able to show up, I'm just going to go ahead and be like, you know what? I don't want you to get your hopes up on this. I'm probably not going to be able to, I'm probably not going to be able to do this, right? And so that's what that means, is being able to be reliable, and making sure, again, with this, that you recognize what your limitations are, right? You're not overcommitting on things that you can't do, right? And I know, like, if you can't go to every function, you can't show up for every single, event, but recognizing that versus trying to say, yes, 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 I'm gonna do it, and then not doing it. And that's the same thing with, making sure that we're instilling that quality in our kids as well, right? Accountability. I feel like this is really, really huge in homes and families. I know it's big in my household. Being able to own your mistakes, apologize, and make amends, right? So when we apologize, when we make amends, when we are admitting our mistakes, which is huge in self-awareness as well, right? When we're able to do that, then we're giving our kids the freedom to make mistakes, acknowledge them, own them, and make amends. And so it's really important for them to be able to see us do that, right? And so the other part of that is, so We saying you own your mistakes, you apologize and make amends, but the other part is that you allow other people to do that as well. So when somebody has done you wrong, then you're able to like allow them to apologize, allow them to make amends and make it right. And so we're talking about another element of trust is the vault. So not sharing stories that are not yours to share is huge. The other part of that is, being in a space where if someone else is sharing something with you that they're not supposed to be sharing, you're looking at them with a side eye, right? And so that's the other piece of the vault that sometimes people forget. And so it's really important to make sure that you're not sharing information that's not yours to share, but then you're not also taking information in that doesn't belong to you. And so that's huge as well. Integrity, choosing courage over comfort. And I know as parents, we always got to be courageous, right? And choose courage over comfort and have those hard conversations with our kids. But we're going to always do what's right over what's fun, faster, easy. And so, again, this is about making sure that our core values are present. And it's not a space where we're just professing them, but we're practicing them every single day. Non-judgment. So when you're and are practicing non-judgment, people within your community, people within your home can ask for what it is that they need without judgment. And this one can sometimes be a challenge, for parents, but thinking about like what it is that the people within your home, your community, what it is that they need, and that you can have that conversation. Have a conversation about what the needs are without judgment, feeling like, hey, I can ask for help. Your kids can ask for help, and they're not going to be judged. You can ask for help and you're not going to be judged, right? And then generosity. Generosity is another huge one for me, I think, is that, when I first thought about the word generosity, I thought about it in a space of just being giving, right? And being able to, give the shirt off your back or give somebody something in need. But when Brene Brown talks about generosity, she's talking about being generous with your not only your actions and the things that you do, but also with your thoughts, right? So you're assuming the most positive thing that you possibly can about the intentions of other people, right? And so if someone forgets to call or someone doesn't do something that they said that they were going to do, then you're not just like, gosh, they didn't want to show up for me, or they don't care about me, or they don't love me. But it's a space of, well, maybe something's up with them because I know they care about me. Maybe, something took place and I'm going to check in, right? I'm going to check in. I'm going to say, hey, Cynthia, you missed my birthday, right? Which Cynthia didn't miss my birthday. She actually got me lots of Sharpie pens. And so that she speaks my love language, right? But if I'm feeling a way and thinking like, well, dang, she didn't even acknowledge my birthday, and we're supposed to be like, like really good friends, and I'm like in a space. And so maybe, birthdays are not a huge thing to Cynthia. Maybe she didn't grow up, constantly having, birthdays as, as like thinking of birthdays as a high priority. But maybe something really happened that day and she just forgot. Right. And so it's just me checking in with her versus now it's a space where, well, dang, I'm just mad. And every time we interacted, she didn't even know that I'm mad, or she didn't know that I'm feeling away. Or, just she had her own stuff that she had going on that day. Right. And so you might say, well, if I'm important to her, then she would remember my birthday. That could be valid as well. But it could also, it's just thinking about checking in with people that you care about, right? And that that care about you, and saying, hey, yesterday was a special day for me, and what's up? You good? Because I didn't hear from you, and I would have liked to have heard from you, and you give that person an opportunity to talk about that and to share with you as if they want to give you a reason, or at least it gives you that space where you're saying like what it is that you need from someone else, right? And allow them to respond. So these 7 elements, I feel like that they broke down that 4-letter word in a huge way. And so we're going to go ahead and move forward and talk about empathy, compassion, sympathy, and pity.
All right, that was awesome. I was all in listening. We're going to move on to the next element of what we're thinking about when we're in community with others and we want to be socially aware. And so being aware of how other people are feeling and how we respond to that is the scale of from pity to compassion. And so when we look at the scale on the screen and we divide this in half, that left side is the space where we don't want to be. And I remember that because I always think about when I hear on TV or in other spaces when people say, don't pity me or don't feel sorry for me. So I know that those are not building community. We want to lean to the right side of this scale and be in the space of empathy and compassion. But those words, pity, sympathy, empathy, and compassion, are often used interchangeably. And so to be really good at it, we need to try to understand the difference. And so pity and sympathy or removed from the person. I pity someone is that I recognize that they're suffering. I recognize that there's something happening to those people over there that's not a good thing. That's pity. What a shame that people right now are suffering through COVID. What a shame that there's some people who are sick and there are people who are dying or losing family members. There are people who are struggling financially. That's a pity. And so it doesn't build community because it's separated. And then sympathy is I care. I do care that there are people in the world that are suffering. I care that there are people in the world who are sick and who are having financial difficulties. And then I move on. And so those two spaces don't build community. They don't connect to other people. We want to be in communities where we connect to other people. As Latrell said, that's one of the reasons why we need community is we want to, humans need community. They need connection. And so to build that connection, we want to be in a space of empathy and compassion. And again, if we're thinking about our communities in a variety of ways, as she mentioned, we might be talking about your home and your family. We might be talking about your work communities, your physical communities where you live, or our world at large. But to build that, we want to be in the space of empathy and compassion. So empathy is I feel your suffering. Whether I've been in the shoes where you are or not, I can show compassion. I can understand what it feels like to be in that space, and I can offer you something. I can offer you an encouraging word. I can offer you a listening ear, but I feel it. I can understand how you feel. And so when we start thinking about empathy is we're thinking in this situation, this staying with the COVID example, we're thinking about, I'm really sorry that you have lost someone or that you are ill. I can understand how I would feel if I was in that place. I can offer you some supports. I can offer you my true honest feelings of sympathy. Sympathy in a way that in a different way that's connected. So that's empathy. And then compassion is putting that empathy into action. I want to relieve your suffering. I want to do something to help. And so sometimes we're not in a space where we can help, but then we still have that empathy where I can feel it. I can be there to listen. I can be a comfort, but I may not be able to alleviate your suffering, but I want to. And so I put it into action. And so when we start looking at our communities and we see people around us suffering, how is it that we respond that helps to support them and then help build our relationship and our community? And in our households, how is it that we are engaging with our children, our spouses, our partners in this space? And so our children may be really struggling with not being in school physically. They may really be struggling with being isolated. So how is it that we show compassion for that? Because kids need that community just like we need community, and they're not getting it. And so how do we show compassion for them, and how do we help relieve their suffering? Trying to be creative with how they get outings, physical outings where they're still socially distant. How do we help them connect virtually with their friends and family members? And so how is it that we can support them? And then how do we show self-compassion? How do you help yourself and forgive yourself and be there for yourself in your suffering? And so we talked a lot about self-care, but we also want to think about, like, we're all in spaces right now. We're in uncharted territory. So you might be having some adverse feelings. And so having self-compassion is I understand that I'm not in my normal space. I'm going to give myself grace for that. And I'm going to find ways to help support myself and move me through that space. And so hopefully that helped to define those a little bit differently. On this slide is a little practice page to think about how this might show up. I gave examples from COVID, but this is another example. And so in this example, you see this man out on the subway platform holding a sign that says seeking human kindness. And so when you come upon this scene, you just got off the train and you walk by, you might look at him and think, this is a homeless person not getting his basic needs met. Excuse me, or you might look at this person and see his sign that he's seeking human kindness, and he is doesn't have family, maybe friends or anyone to talk to. He wants some human connection. So either way, this man is demonstrating that he's in a space that he might be suffering. He might be in a negative space. And so when you look at that and you're thinking about it from the stance of pity, sympathy, empathy, and compassion, how is it that we respond in showing pity or sympathy? And so I'll give you some examples for those, and then I want you to think of some examples for empathy and compassion. So pity is distance. So pity might be, I understand that there are people in the world who are suffering and not having their basic needs met. I understand that there are people in the world that don't have human kindness. What a pity that people like that exist. Sympathy is a little bit closer to the person in that I'm sorry that that man over there is suffering. I'm sorry that that man doesn't have human kindness, doesn't have his basic needs met. And in both scenarios, pity and sympathy, I continue on by. And so I have no connection to him at all. I acknowledged him, I felt sorry, but I continued on. But when we're in our spaces of empathy and compassion, we're going to connect to this man in some way. So I want you to take a moment and think about how might you respond if you want to show empathy or compassion for him. And we'll pause for a second for you to think, and then we'll share a couple of examples. And I'm going to put you on alert, Latrell. I'm going to call you out in just a moment to share how you might respond to this man if you were coming from a stance of empathy or a stance of compassion. Okay, so I hope you all had some time to think. I hope that was enough time. It's hard to gauge, to think of how you might respond. But Latrell, do you have some thoughts about how you might respond if you came off the train and saw this man and you wanted to show empathy and compassion?
I think one of the first things that I would do is smile, say, how are you doing? Maybe try to engage in some level of conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think when you the smile, I like what that comes up a few times in sessions. So smiling is empathy. It's kind of compassion too, because that's an action, but you're giving him a connection. And that's a good one because some people share sometimes when they see a stranger, he's a stranger. So they may not want to interact too closely because they want to feel safe, but a smile doesn't make you unsafe. A hello doesn't make you unsafe as you go by. And so I think those are great examples. Thank you for sharing those. Others have shared that they might sit and chat with him if you feel comfortable with that, or ask him, just asking him, is there something that I can help you with? Is there something you need? And so that's again, compassion, because we're trying to help relieve his suffering. And so then you take that into your community spaces, and thinking about how you can just change your frame just a little bit to move from pity, I feel so sorry for them, to empathy, how is it that I can connect with them? And so we're going to watch a quick video from Brene Brown. We mentioned her earlier with the braving. She's one of our favorite researchers. And so this is a snip from her TED Talk. And in this little snippet, she's explaining empathy versus sympathy. And it's been animated. So hopefully it'll help explain what I was just trying to explain on the previous slides.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here. And you're not alone. Sympathy is, woo, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Yeah, so she just to reiterate that empathy and compassion fuel connection, and that's what we're looking for in our communities, and that's what social awareness is helping us to do, is being aware of what other people are thinking and feeling so that we can show empathy and compassion and build our communities. And so the next element that we wanted to talk about is perspective taking, and she mentioned perspective taking in that video. So being able to step into other people's shoes and see things from their viewpoint helps, again, to build community. And so this quote at the top I like to use is, we are self-involved creatures, most often seeing and acting from within our own tiny sphere of experience and based on our own needs, wants, and fears. And so it's kind of saying that we go through life in this tunnel vision, just surrounded by things that are about our lives and our experience, and that we're filtering through our own needs, wants, values, emotions. And so when we are in that space, we're not taking in the others in our community, the other people that are around us. And so when we start thinking about perspective taking, we're zooming out of that tunnel vision, and we're seeing a bigger picture. When we're zooming out and taking that perspective, I can see it from your angle, I can see it from your viewpoint, I can see it through some of your experiences because I'm engaging with you. And so when we do that, it helps us then connect better to other people and show that empathy that we mentioned earlier. It helps us to access strength and creativity because we see other ideas and other perspectives and other people's inputs. So their strengths become my strengths because I'm connecting with them and seeing from their viewpoint. So that's helping me build up strengths. And then it helps me understand what I can control. That's a big one when you're thinking about taking on perspective and you're thinking about, this shows up a lot in workspaces, but I can see how it would show up in home as well. Is like, not everything we can control. And if we get bogged down in trying to control it, we don't move forward. But when we take that perspective of, that's his lane, that's her lane, this is my lane, we can be more productive. And then we get to cultivate humility, acceptance, and humor, because we see that we're not alone. We see that we can falter and other people can falter, and that it can be okay, that it's just okay. And so it just helps us, if we change the way we see things, we change the way we feel and act. And that seems to come up in each of our competencies in some way or another, is that we're learning more about ourselves. We're going to see things differently, and taking on perspective allows us to see things differently. And so we act differently. And so you'll see that play out in home and in your other spaces. And so a little practice here about perspective taking. And so when you look at this picture, just jot down what you see when you initially look at this picture. And then after you jot that down, I'll say that some people see a duck. So note if you saw a duck. And some people, or a goose, and some people see a bunny or a rabbit. So note if that's what you saw. And if you saw both, that's awesome. If you saw neither, we're going to help you get there. And so when you look at this picture, the initial response is that we may or may not see the same thing. You may have seen the duck, I may have seen the rabbit, but we didn't see the same thing, even though we're looking at the same picture. But then I can help you, and you can help me change our perspective so that we can see both. And so we move forward when we both bring in our perspective. So I'm going to help you if you didn't see it. So in both animals, this space where my cursor is the eye. But if you're looking at the bunny and you go here, that's his snout, which makes this his ears behind him. Or if I start with the eye and I'm looking for the goose, this is the back of his head and this is his duck bill. And so me giving you guidance, giving you a little bit more information, help change your perspective. And so think about how that plays out in our spaces at home. If we're listening to our kids or listening to our spouses and hearing what they have to say, it may change our perspective. When I ask my child why you didn't, I'll go back to cleaning the room, hearing her answer changed my perspective of what I thought the reason was that she didn't clean the room and what she thought the reason was. And so we were able to problem solve differently. So let's look at another. So there's a woman here, but I want you to jot down, do you see an old woman or do you see a young woman? And Latrell, which is the one that you always see first? You're mute. Uh-oh, you can't unmute. Let's see if I can help you. Uh-oh. Okay, well, if I remember, I can't unmute you either. But if I remember correctly, you always see the young woman first?
Yes.
There you are.
Yes, I always see the young woman first.
Yeah, and so she sees the young woman first. I usually see the old woman first, but we've done this enough times that we can see both. And so when you wrote yours down, you're probably now thinking, let me see the other one, let me see the other one. So Latrell, can you walk us through? I'll use the cursor, but tell us how you switched from the younger woman to the older woman.
So yeah, of course, I always saw like the chin of the young woman and the hair, right? So that's the chin. So that was easy. You know, I thought she looked snazzy and like a glamorous, like young girl. And so then, Cynthia, I think you helped me with this actually. So then when looking for the older woman, I noticed that the choker that's on the young woman was actually the older woman's mouth, right? And so that's where her mouth is, and then her nose, the older woman's, the chin on the younger woman was the nose of the older woman. Yeah. So I was able to see it. And so now immediately when I look at both of these images, I'm able to see the entire picture and see that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And so what Latrell said, she saw the younger woman first, but now she knows how to switch her perspective when she wants to see the older woman. And so that's helping her to accomplish that goal when she wants to see the older woman. And so in that last one with the duck, I guided you through. But in this one, Latrell was switching her perspective on her own. She knows what to anchor to, what to look at to move her perspective. And so that's what we're asking you to do in your spaces, is to just shift and take on another perspective. That kind of plays back into when we were talking about generosity with trust and thinking about other person's intentions. Just changing your perspective helps you to connect because you're thinking the best of other people. And this last perspective slide that we want to talk about, this one is about, this one you see the man on land, and he's on this island, probably deserted island, is pretty small. And he's so excited to see this boat coming. The man in the boat apparently has been out there for a minute, so he's so excited to see land. So they're both in the same situation, but they have different goals and different outlooks about what the situation is about, a different story that they're telling themselves about this situation. And so that happens a lot in our spaces too. We're in the same space. We're in the same classroom, the same family, the same job, the same neighborhood, the same United States. We're in the same space, but what we see is different, and what we think is the ultimate goal may or may not be the ultimate goal. But I like to think about, for this picture, how is it that they can work together now? And so the man on land can tell the guy in the boat what it's like to be on that land and what the pluses are, and what the challenges are. And the man in the boat can tell, well, we don't want to go that way because I know what's over there. We've already been there. So maybe there's a way that they can work together and save themselves. Together, the both of them can be in a better place. And so how is it that we work with others, and teach our children to work with others so that we all end up in a better place? And so that's what perspective taking is about. So just a couple more tips about building social awareness in your children. So we want to make sure that you got from this session so far some ways that you can think about how you can be more socially aware, and then thinking about how you can use that awareness to help build your communities. But we want our children to also be socially aware, and we want them to be able to be in community at home, but we want them to be able to go out there when they're not with us and be in productive community with other people and be socially aware. And so here's a few tips we want to share with you about how to get there with your kids. And so that first one is encourage a varied circle of friends. And so what you're doing is you're saying, my child might have a circle of friends at school, and a circle of friends at church, and a circle of friends in the community, and a circle of friends related to my friends. But you want them to have a variety of people that they connect with, because that's going to let them learn more about different people. That's going to help them be culturally sensitive and culturally aware. And it's going to help them build perspective, because they're going to have different experiences with each of those groups. And so we want them to learn how to work with a lot of people, and a variety of people. And we want to teach our kids, I think we talked about this on a previous session, we want to teach our kids that differences are an asset. Differences make our communities more diverse, and that's a plus. And so having a circle of friends that you trust and that you can build that trust with is going to be helpful for our kids. Teaching our children to settle their own conflicts. And so when your child is in conflict, whether it's at home with a sibling or at school with a classmate, helping them to think through how to solve that is going to give them a skill set that they can take when they're away from us. So sometimes our urge as parents is to protect our child instantly. But when our kids come home from school, for example, when we go to school physically, or when they come off the computer and they've had a conflict with a classmate, having them think through and supporting them in how they solve it, you can give them coaching and tips, but letting them figure it out is just going to really build their confidence in that ability. And it's okay that we have to intervene at times, because we are, their protectors, but as much as we can, we want them to handle their own. The third one we use quite often, this one comes up a lot, using book and television characters as discussion points. And this is, it's really practical because your kids get to experience more variety of situations when you pull from other sources. And so you're not just pulling from what their lives that they live every day, but you can watch a television show together and just have them notice when a character shows empathy, or when a character misses an opportunity to show empathy, or notice when a character is showing a trusting characteristic or trusting trait. And the same thing with our books. And even with our older kids and our high school kids who might be reading, they read more similar books to what we read as an adult. And so having those book talks and conversations about what's going on in the book and how those characters handle problems, it gives you an opportunity to then help your older children hone those skills that they've already been practicing since younger ages, but you want to make sure they continue developing. And so it's a great way to remove sensitive topics from them and makes it more comfortable to talk about, because it's somebody else's, but they still learn from it and grow from it. The next one, teaching a growth mindset. This one teaching, the idea of a growth mindset is understanding that we are human beings. We are always learning and growing, and that's okay. So if there's something that we don't get right now, it just means we're on a path to learning and growing. And so having that growth mindset gives children, well, actually, it gives all of us that sense of, it takes away that defeatist attitude when you're not good at something, because you can just say, well, I'll continue to practice, I'll be persistent, I'll persevere, I'll learn it and grow it. But the other part of it is that, and Latrell mentioned this when she was talking about trusting, the other part of that is that we allow others to make mistakes, because we understand that they also are in a growth space, and that they can, maybe they wronged us or hurt our feelings or did something wrong, but they're also in a space of learning. And so when you're able to be in a space where that's acceptable, and you can accept change, that they can change, that grows your relationship, and it allows for them to understand what the spaces you like to be in, and you understand more about them. So it's actually a learning curve when people make mistakes. Even if they make mistakes with you, that's a learning space for both of you. Having conversations about social challenges. This one is similar to the conflict one, is when your children are in social situations where there's a challenge. Maybe there's someone in their class that they just really don't get along with, or somebody that's really not nice to them. Having the conversation with your child about how to manage that is a growth opportunity for them. And so maybe it's a space for them to learn that, okay, well, not everybody's your friend, but this is how you can still work together in a respectful way. Or like, maybe that person is not the person that you want to hang out with socially, but here's another productive way, or here's how you speak up for yourself and advocate for yourself. So lots of different things that you can model just listening to them talk about challenges that they're having in their social settings. And then the last two, encouraging acts of kindness and using service learning. That's a space to help us think about compassion. Because remember, compassion is empathy in action. So how is it that we help others? How is it that we show kindness to others? How is it that we are growing our community? And so thinking about service learning and acts of kindness, we're going to see other people. We're going to see other people. We're going to see their challenges, and our children are going to learn to seek to help, to show compassion. So hopefully one of those tips resonated with you. Hopefully there's one there that you can pick out to focus on as we move forward with our social and emotional learning for our children. So the last piece that we want to share with you about our communities is about forgiveness. And again, we're going to do to think about community in your home and larger, that we have to be in a space of forgiveness. And this quote from Archbishop Desmond Tutu in Info, I want to read the whole quote to you, and we'll talk a little bit about what it's saying, and then we'll go from there. But forgiveness is the only way to heal ourselves and to be free of the past. Without forgiveness, we remain tethered to the person who harmed us. We are bound to the chains of bitterness, tied together, trapped. Until we can forgive the person who harmed us, that person will hold the keys to our happiness. That person will be our jailer. When we forgive, we take back control of our own fate and our feelings. We become our own liberators. And we just love this quote so much, because the idea of forgiveness is two ways. We want to forgive other people, and we want other people to forgive us, to grow our communities, grow our relationships, and to move forward in our relationships. But the way that the quote is telling you is that actually forgiving is more for you than it is for the other person. Because the other person may not even realize they've wronged you, or maybe they do, but they are going on with their lives. And we are the ones that are tethered. We are the ones that are holding on to that bitterness because we're not forgiving them. So we actually are holding ourselves captive by not letting go and not moving on and forgiving that person. And so that's the last thing to think about, is just in your spaces, if someone's done you wrong, if you need to speak up for yourself and have that conversation and build relationship, do that. But if you have the space to forgive with or without that conversation, that's gonna help you more than it's gonna help them. So we encourage you to do that. Anything you want to add to that, Latrell, before we do our closer?
No, I wouldn't at all. I think that, those are just, when you're thinking about community, like you said, it's just thinking about, like, how do I show up? How am I in this space of forgiveness? How am I letting that impact my relationships? How am I thinking about, like, how it is that I'm showing empathy and compassion, and and how that shows up every single day in my life. And I think this, more than any presentation that we've had, allows me to be in this where I'm like intentionally having to think about it a little bit more, and how that shows up with my kids and how I'm making sure that I'm incorporating that. So I always get something every single time we do this presentation.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, thank you. Me too. All right, so thank you. So we're ready to close out with our optimistic closure. And so for our closure, we have quotes. And so there are 4 quotes on the screen, and I'll share each of them with you. But as I read them, just think about which one resonates with you today. All 4 of them are related to something that we've talked about today. So which one is speaking to you? Which one motivates you into action? And just which one is the one that you would highlight to sum up your time for today. And so the first one is from Brene Brown. It's from the video clip that we watched earlier. And it says, rarely does an empathic response begin with at least. Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to put the silver lining around it. That's Brene Brown. Then we have one from President Barack Obama, learning to stand in somebody else's shoes, to see through their eyes. That's how peace begins. And it's up to you to make that happen. Empathy is a quality of character that can change the world. In the middle, we have a quote from author James Baldwin. Children have never been very good at listening to their elders, but they have never failed to imitate them. And then the last one is from Marcus Aurelius. Everything we hear is an opinion, not fact. Everything we see is perspective. Sorry, I had a picture over the last word. Hold on. Let me do that one again. Everything we hear is an opinion, not fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. And that's Aurelius. And so I'll share Aurelius's quote is the one that's speaking to me today, because the idea that everything that we hear is an opinion, not a fact, because we're hearing through filters, and everything we see is a perspective, not necessarily the truth, because it's not taking into account other people's perspective. It's just my perspective. What I'm seeing and hearing is filtered to my own stuff. So if I'm not intentional about taking on other perspectives, I'm going to always be missing elements. So that one's really standing out for me. Which one is standing out for you today, Latrell?
I keep forgetting to unmute myself. Today, it's Brene Brown, actually.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So a lot of times the Baldwin quote stands out for me. But today it's the Brene Brown.
Yeah, awesome. All right, thank you for sharing. All right, so I hope you found a quote that spoke to you today and that sums up our session for today. And so as we move on, we do want to invite you, again, as always, to share your feedback using this QR code or the bit.ly at the bottom. Let us know what was helpful, what was not helpful, what you would like to see offered in the future, what you might want to dig more deeply into. Any of that feedback would be helpful for us, and we appreciate that. We do consider feedback a gift. And then finally, we'll just share our contact information. I am Cynthia Brown, and you see my email, and then my Twitter handle is the CCW one. And my partner, my teammate, my friend is Latrell Adams, and you see her email and her Twitter handle. And then the handle in the middle, that GCS_SEL_office is our department Twitter handle. Feel free to follow us. Feel free to tag us in. If you're tweeting things that you're doing or sharing that you think connects to SEL, or we would just be interested in seeing and knowing, that would be awesome. And so with that, we will close our time together. We want to thank you again for engaging with us through this series. The last session is relationship skills. And so hopefully you'll tune in for that one as well. And we just hope that something we have said has been helpful for you, and that you continue to grow in your social and emotional development, and you help your children to do so as well. And I'll let Miss Adams say her remarks before we sign off.
Yeah, thank you so much for showing up every single week to engage with us on this meaningful topic of social emotional learning and the components of that. You know, Cynthia and I can both attest to the fact that, you know, the competencies of social emotional learning are a game changer in our relationships and how we interact with each other, how we interact with our kids. And so it doesn't mean that we always get it right? Because we are human, and we are still works in progress, and we have to show ourselves compassion, like Cynthia talked about today, show ourselves grace. But it does mean that we're intentionally trying to put things in place that allow us to connect on a deeper level and have more authentic relationships with people. And just think about how it is that we're showing up in our spaces, right? And a space is our home, right? So I have to think about how I show up in my community at home, and how I'm doing the things that I do outside of my home, how I'm doing that within my home, right? And so thank you so much for engaging with us and being here week after week. And we hope, like Cynthia said, that something has been meaningful for you to share with your kids and take back to your world and your community. So we can't wait to see you next week for our relationship skills. Invite a friend, tell a friend, share with a friend. And thank you so much again. I hope you have an amazing day.